But I have so many things that I want to like speak about with you because you wrote so much that I don't even know where to start. Okay, so you've been in tech for a very very long time, right? For at least 15 years, right? That's about the time you started with Salesforce. Maybe how did you even get into Salesforce first place?
Oh man, I think it's a great story and one I've been telling a lot over the past couple of weeks. So I think the journey that I tell people, right, is I started with tech like when I was like, yay tall, right? So I was 5, 6 years old. A lot of people won't know what this is, but I started off on like an Acer 286, right? Like a bare bones computer. It didn't have a CD-ROM, right? We had floppy drives. And my intro to really tech and coding, right, was trying to get video games to run. Like I would get like Indiana Jones as a video game at Christmas, right? And the first step was how do I get this thing to run, right? And so I was hacking batch files, IRQ, relays, trying to get this thing to run on this device that, we were poor and it wasn't designed for it. And so really fell into that and then and started coding, picked up C along the way, right? And in high school ended up, doing like an independent study and built the attendance tracking app for our school, which you would never do that in 2025. Like there's just too much regulation, right? And software as a business, but that's how I got into it. And then when I went to university, I was going to be an engineer, sat down the first day and introduced myself to classmates and they looked at me and were like, hey, we're studying. And I'm like, this is the first day of school. Like, what are you studying? Like, there's nothing to study. And I was like, this isn't for me. And I took my math skills over to finance and economics, and was like, I'm just going to be a finance bro for the rest of my life, right? Like, I'm gonna do econometrics and build data models and go from there. And then, fast forward after the army and staying up as a hobby coder, right, and stuff, and working on side projects. Got my first job from my MBA, my master's program. I walked into the office, was going to be a venture capital analyst, and was like, cool, I'm going to invest in companies, right, and be the next, Andreessen Horowitz. And funny enough, like so many other stories, they said, congratulations, here's Salesforce. We don't know what it is. We don't have any implementation partners. You're an engineer, figure it out. And, that's really my foray into Salesforce. Never had heard about it until that moment. Kind of turned up my nose, right? I was like, I'm a traditional engineer, right? I'm a Ruby guy at that point, right? I want to build web apps. I want to build, and get on with, with the 52 Signals guys, right? Like that's what I want to do. And fell in love with it, right? From, both fighting it, right, with force.com, that job. I was also, owning our physical servers, right? And Office 365 was first coming out in the cloud. So just was really fortuitous to come into it at that time and still do that development, but also try to stay on the back end side.
So yeah, what I was asking, are you still missing that normal software engineering?
Not so much, right? Because I try to find roles in companies, right, where I can still work on that side of the house. So if you look at my time at LeafLink or CareRev, I still managed, back-end engineering teams and was involved on the product side, and still got my hands dirty, right? My code is in production apps today on the web, and I think that's the power, right? So many teams say like, oh, that's IT or that's engineering. And like, hey, we're the business and Salesforce side. And I really think if you start uniting those two teams and you really start to unlock the power, right? Like you get really specialized information on both sides and they come with those, problems in a different way and innovate, right? And end up building a better solution. So like, I've been fortunate enough to always be in those roles where I can stretch, the Salesforce and the traditional product engineering side.
Was the MBA worth it? I had a dream doing the MBA once.
People ask me this a lot, and I got my MBA, 15 years ago, and it was at a time in my life, right, where I didn't know what I was, wanted to do with my life, right? So it's kind of funny. It's exactly the situation I'm in now. And I knew I had leadership skills from the military, right? I knew I had some hard skills and technical skills from coding, right? But I didn't know what the business world was, right? I had no idea what it was. And so I went there, right? And I had some mentors who said, like, go get your MBA, not for the curriculum, but for the network you're going to make, right? Like the people that you're going to talk to, the lifelong friends, right? The conversations you'll have. Anyone can pick up the MBA curriculum. It's really that if you get into like that top 25, right, or top 10 program, that things start to change because of, just who you are, right? Because if you're going to a Stanford or a Wharton, like it's just a different caliber of people and network. But I think the MBA was worth it for me because, I met, people that were my wedding, right? I meet people who I ask for business advice, people who reach out to me and, comment on my photography. But the curriculum itself, I say you can pick up anywhere, right? Especially if you're running your own job or you're in a business, like you're picking those skills up every day, like the marketing tactics, the strategy, the finance. And I think really what it's about is just building that network. And you can do that, anywhere today, joining a club, right? Going online, the Salesforce community, any of those things really can get you that like-minded people that will build those bonds that you need.
I kind of also think the same way about university. I studied computer science, and I thought, oh wow, computer science is going to become a developer. And then you come the first day and like math and math, and I'm like, I just want to code. Where's the freaking coding? And we're not coding at all, like for the first 2 years. And I was like, what the hell is that?
Yep.
So at the end, I think a lot of those MBAs and universities, they're more for connections and just hanging out and for a certain period of life rather than for the knowledge.
And I think university, right, in the MBA, like it forces you into those subjects that you would normally never study, right? Like I would never study accounting, but I picked up those skills, right? Like in undergrad, I took the history of the Ottoman Empire in Turkey, and it turns out it's still one of my favorite subjects in classes today, right? That I don't think I would have took that class if I wasn't trying to be lazy and try to knock out like 5 requirements with one course, right? Because it was a history course, it was a diversity course, it was this, and those lucky things, because you're forced into something sometimes are the best things you learn. And I think that's what, university or even careers are all about, right? Is taking that different path.
And that's what also a little bit different about the Salesforce ecosystem. I feel like the community feeling in Salesforce is way different from comparison to like Next.js or Java, like where people are just kind of working as a Java developers, but they don't necessarily have like that much of connections between each other. Versus with a Salesforce, how many people on LinkedIn do we know? And like that's pretty much the whole Salesforce ecosystem, right? And we are all connected and we all kind of know each other, and that's what's really cool about Salesforce ecosystem. When you started posting, did you have any special strategy in mind, or did you just wanted to get started with the posting and all the frustration about Salesforce?
It's funny. I mean, those who know me, right? It's probably not a surprise. Like, I tend to break all the rules. You hear things on LinkedIn, right, and social media, like be consistent, keep a theme, post about only these things. That's how you grow. And maybe if I followed those rules, I would have 100,000 followers instead of 15,000. But when I started posting, it wasn't to get an influence, right, or fans or following, or even a job. I started posting because I had these thoughts in my head and I didn't know how to tell a story. In photography and creative side, right, it's all about the storytelling. But I found in my career, I would have ideas or need to educate people, and I couldn't quite get that into a way that they would resonate with. There would always be that kind of like, well, he's coming from a technical perspective, right? He doesn't understand it. But I'm like, well, I have a business degree, right? And I've worked in the business departments. And so I started posting to say, like, here's the things that I've always told my coworkers. They didn't believe me. And so I was like, okay, let me start telling that online, right? Hone my message, see if anybody else kind of identifies with it. And as I got better at it, I noticed my coworkers or former coworkers texting me and be like, wow, I noticed that thing you said, and that makes sense. And like that person kind of like gave you social proof that, yes, you do know what you're talking about. And it gave me a little bit more confidence as well, right? To sit and have that executive presence in those conversations and drive it. So I think I mainly posted with, like, I started with help articles, right? And those didn't take off. I'm not a good help article writer, right? Like I connect the dots. I'm more of an in-person teacher. And so I looked and said, like, there's a lot of people saying the exact same thing. Let's start talking about my experiences, right? My frustrations with the software, and not really as a way to like dig against the company, but to show like it's okay to have a different thought, right? Your brand is still your brand. You don't have to conform your brand to others. Be who you are, share your story, and, try to use it as a way to educate others, lift them up, but also improve the software. And so, long story short, like, yeah, I just started posting, kind of like how Forrest Gump just, started running one
day. Okay. Do you feel like it helped your career, the whole posting thing?
We'll find out. There's two schools of thought. It's really funny. I personally think it's helped my career tremendously. Like, I'm on these podcasts. I've met people I've never met before, right? I landed a client because of it. I went to a large quote to cash summit because of it. But I think there's that question, right? I get that unsolicited advice all the time in my inbox, like, Matt, you shouldn't talk about ADHD, right? Employers are going to see that and think you're lazy or the talkative kid or that, or don't call out CEOs. Other CEOs will get mad and not hire you. And I realize I'm privileged because I can wait to take a job. But in my mind, right, at my age, I go, are those companies that I really want to work for, where a CEO gets mad that I called out another CEO, or that CEO doesn't want to hear feedback, right? Or I have a boss who doesn't understand ADHD, right? And so they won't understand my style. And so I use it as an opportunity to say, like, it's okay to share these stories, right? There's other successful people out there who have, these personality traits, right? These disabilities. And let's talk about them, because like the world's full of lots of amazing people. So we'll see if my shit posting it makes a difference online in my career.
like Mark Benioff, did you notice that he never responded to any of your posts?
And I don't expect that. He works for Fortune 500, right, with 175,000 employees, or maybe less now under him.
But he started LinkedIn.
I do want to meet Mark one day, right, and just have an honest campfire conversation. I think he's a brilliant man, right? Like, you can't take a startup from 1999, right, at the boom of the dot-com bubble, right, survive the dot-com bubble, push through it, and be where you're at today. I think, right, it's a classic founder dilemma, right, where you become a victim of your own success, right, and you don't realize that you've become the company that you struck out to take down, right? Like, it's that success that makes him like the evil person, right, and the figurehead that you have to talk against. But honestly, like, I don't know him personally. Don't know anyone who knows him personally, right? And so I'd love to have that conversation and just pick his brain, right? Like, what is he thinking about when he goes on air, right? Like, all of these things. But yeah, I will still be there to be held accountable, right? And I think of like the Romans, right, where you had the guy whispering in your ear at the chariot, right? Like memento mori, right? It keeps you grounded, makes you like realize that, you're not immortal, right? You're not a legend. Like, there's other people out there. And so, yeah, that's my rambling answer.
You have a lot of historic references. You had Romans right now, and then you had the Ottoman Empire.
Yeah, I watch too many documentaries and read too many podcasts, or listen to too many podcasts. I don't think you can read a podcast.
Yeah, there's this podcast that I really enjoyed. I think I like listened almost to everything. I think it's called like something like How to Conquer the World or something like this. It's like a history podcast about all of the guys. And okay, it's completely off topic. I don't remember. Like, the thing is that like when I listen to the podcast, I don't remember to anything, especially if it's like history podcast. Not a single thing that I remember from that. Yeah. Anyway, this is off topic. We were speaking about the Mark Benioff. The reason why I was speaking about this, first of all, would be nice to at some point, the same as you saying, like to actually talk to Mark Benioff like from the community standpoint, like from what we see, like the frustration that we see in Salesforce as a company, as like people who are working with Salesforce pretty much every day. It would be interesting to actually like truthfully speak about this with Mark Benioff and see what are the responses and what are the justifications for certain actions. That would be very interesting.
Yeah. And I think too, right, kind of breaking it down by industry, right? Like we see Salesforce so much, there's the enterprises, right? And then there's the small business and startups and mid-market. And I think it'd be interesting to hear from his lens, right, of like who he views the customer as, like who is he serving ultimately, like who is the Salesforce platform actually for, right? Are they designing it in a way that it's mainly for enterprises, right? But small businesses can use it and you can scale up into it. Or, is it truly an enterprise platform? And small businesses, are kind of just using it because it's legacy, right? And that's how they got their start. So it'd be curious to hear that from his viewpoint, right? Like, I don't think we hear much about like the ideal customer, right? Or the ICP of Salesforce like we do, any new software, right? Like who is your target customer and who are you actually building for? Because honestly, you can't build a platform for everybody. It will either serve no one or it'll serve one population really well and another population, kind of okay, right?
I think that Salesforce doesn't really address the smaller companies and like mid-sized companies. But maybe they don't even have to. I mean, they have a lot of bigger companies. Why would they?
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, right? Because I think they do. If you read, like, I forgot who posted it, or not posted it, but the comment and the quote. I was taken aback by it because I think it was what their CRO that said, small businesses out there are clamoring for this product and they're ready for Agentforce and they're ready for this. And coming from 100%, background of small business and startup, I can tell you right now, I know very few leaders, in the small business space who are like, yeah, I want to bring on Agentforce. I feel like Salesforce is serving me well. Like I was talking to somebody yesterday who was very intimately familiar with Salesforce. They've used it their entire career, and they were trying to find every single justification as a small business to go over to HubSpot. And I'm having that conversation going like, there's pros and cons, right? Like I will gladly use HubSpot with Salesforce, but I don't think in your case, right? Like you can't go to HubSpot for everything, right? Because you do have field service, right? You do have this other integration need. And so I think that's the disservice. You hear so many people when you go to market, right? Or talk to CROs who just view Salesforce as that 4-letter word. And like, we have to push through that because I think in our roles, right, as admins, developers, architects, like those are the people that we have to convince on every product and feature we have, right? And if they already have that viewpoint of like, Salesforce is just going to cost me more money, right? Or I'm not getting my investment out of it. It's hard to tell that story. And so what I would love, right, is Salesforce to come out and kind of say like, yeah, we have a reputation for overselling, right? Or being too big. How can we fix that, right? I think that actual conversation to say, look, we've grown as a company and we have massive 10% year over year growth. Cool. How can we give back and make sure that you're as successful as us so then we can expand that pie together?
I remember they had like years ago, they had with all this whole like Ohana thing where they like, why 1% of our profit or revenue we donate, 1% we do for something else, and 1% like there was like a couple of those things. And now the like those type of messages that we used to hear when like I joined the ecosystem, what like hooked me up so much because I was like, wow, it's so cool, like so future looking, they're spending so much money. I think they're they used to be at least one of those companies who spent the most on the like research and development, R&D. And you just don't hear those messages anymore, right? From Salesforce. Everything is kind of like replaced by the AI. That's pretty much it.
And it's an interesting business strategy, right? So going back to my MBA, one of my favorite classes was strategy, right? And you look at like Porter's 5 forces and those things, right? And you look at stickiness and those. I think Mark and the team, right, always like to bet big, right? Or they acquire companies to grow. I think they had a lot of investor pressure And I think AI, erupted, and it takes a lot as an enterprise company at scale, right, to roll out AI features and make it a logical way. And I think they took a bet, right? And I think if they had asked a lot of the community rather than a lot of customers, I think they would have went a different route, right? My view is that AI would be beneficial to everyone if it was available in core, right? To say, here's how you can troubleshoot, right? Here's how your admins can not have to answer the same freaking question over and over about like why this contract didn't sync to intact, right? Like, here's the fields, right? Program that. And so like, or if you're in that flow, right? And it says like, hey, you didn't have a error handler, right? Or the performance of this flow is going to be bad. I think if I were in those shoes, right, I would have pushed it more into the hands of the people who built the community, right? The advocates, the admins who, are out there marketing the product for free every day, right? The ISVs and SIs who are building products. Put that in core. Let everyone start to get comfortable with it, just like they do with ChatGPT, like in Claude, right? Know how the tool works, know where it goes, and then layer in more of the agentic layer. The problem with that approach, though, is, right, it makes customers happy, but that's not a revenue stream. And that's the issue, right? It's like you can either be customer obsessed these days or be obsessed with revenue and growth. And I think there is a happy medium there, but companies are having a hard time doing it at the enterprise level. But at the startup level, like there's several companies out there that I think are doing amazing at both, but they have that luxury, right? Because they are that close to customers. But that brings me back to Dreamforce and World Tour, right? Like if you have these giant events with all of your customers, like embed yourself. I don't see any of the executives walking the floor, right? Or just randomly sitting in the session to just talk to customers. They're always hidden behind executive sessions, right? Or the VP, VIP areas. Like I think in True to Core is great, but Parker and, Mark and everybody else in the executive team, right? Sit in the damn rooms, listen to the questions that are happening in the sessions, right? Sit amongst the people. At lunchtime, go out there and have one of the crappy boxed lunches and talk to people and figure out what their experiences are. I did that with product manager leadership last year and about my flow test, right? And their eyes opened up, right? And so I think that's what I'd like to see, right? Is get the muckety mucks back out to the people and have them circulate.
And that's what I'm a little bit kind of concerned about. I don't want to say afraid about, but like something that kind of bothers me a little bit, because I think that right now or in the previous years, Salesforce haven't been the most successful AI company in the world, right? We had Einstein before, and it was kind of like a joke in a lot of cases, right? So like it wasn't really up to standard. And right now with the Agentforce, it's also, in my opinion, is not up to standard what Salesforce could potentially deliver, right? What I'm afraid about is that at the end, let's say fast forward 5-10 years from now, Salesforce is going to lose this whole AI race. And the company that's going to lose AI race is at the end, those companies that's going to be kind of obsolete, right? This is what I'm concerned about. This is what's always on my mind. What do you think about this?
I think, right, it's a good thing to be concerned about. If we look at companies that, went through a disruptive change over time, right? Like we'll start with IBM, right? Like the saying was, you never got fired for buying IBM until you did, right? Because they hit that innovation wall, right? And they, fought against, a Windows and Microsoft, right? And those pieces. And they weren't successful, right? Into the consulting arm, and they reinvented themselves. And then you look at Blockbuster versus Netflix, right? The popular one there. I don't think that's where we're at today, but I also think we're still so early in AI that I don't think it makes sense to make the big bets, right? Because Salesforce and other companies are investing probably billions of dollars at this point into their platform and technology on AI. And this is V1. Like, we're not there yet. And the technology that we have today isn't the technology that we have in 5 years. So like, I think the issue will be like these companies that invest in it at scale for what it is today, and then they're going to have to re-implement in 5 years. Well, Salesforce is going to have to maintain that, right? It's the reason that we still have Visualforce and Classic, because not everyone's on Lightning 11 years later. And so I play the cautionary tale of everybody in the hype world, right? Of like, no, like you're not going to get left behind on AI right now. Like no one taught you how to send an email, right? No one taught you how to use Slack. No one taught you how to use the web. You just did it because it was there. And there's people that are really good at using Google, right? And can use Boolean search. And there's others that just randomly search, right? But the tech got better, right? Like when I started using search, you had to use quotes, you had to use ampersands, right? And the pipes, right? But now you can just guess and Google will return it, right? Because that's what happens with technology. You're not going to get left behind per se. You just might not have that first mover advantage and set yourself apart. I think the other thing too to remember is it's 2025 and the preferred email client of most enterprises is still the Outlook desktop, right? Gmail's been around forever. The web app, right? Outlook web app is still there, but we still work in an environment, right, where people love fat clients on their desktop. So I think there's this always interesting thing in our line of work and information work to think like everybody's like us, right? And technology is there and it's going to permeate. But the average person, like they're just there to show up, do their job, go home and do what they're really good at, right? And so I think that's the problem we have now is everybody feels the gold rush. Everyone feels the excitement. Everybody wants to be part of that brand new thing, but forgetting that brand new thing still has to be proven out and still has billions of people in the world who have to have their impact on it.
So where do you think it's going to be in like 5 years?
I mean, we'll either all be dead.
Nice.
Or, I think we're going to be, there's two other things that can actually happen in work, right? I think we can see either AI forcing us to work the same amount of hours, right? And be more productive with less people. Or what I would hope, right, is AI actually lets us have that work-life balance again. And this is once again my bias, right? I tend to work 72-hour weeks because I think I have to, right? Like that's what drives me. My ADHD says like if you're still like you're not being productive, right? But my wife, on the other hand, her 40 hours are up and brain turns off and she's done, right? And so I think that's another piece we have to realize, right? Is there's all of the loud people on LinkedIn have a different personality than the most of the people in the world, right? Like we're the type A's, we're the ones who have something to say or to sell or do. But to your original question of where AI will be in 5 years, I think it'll be a lot smarter, right? Like we're not going to make fun of it as much. I don't think AGI is going to happen. And
no?
you can, I mean, I think AGI is misunderstood by like, okay. Soapbox style.
let's
yeah. The average person right now who talks about AI, and this is a casting wide net, right? And I'm sorry to use generics here, but if you look at the average person who talks about AI, they don't actually understand what AI is, right? They don't understand how an LLM works. They don't understand the mechanics. Like you hear things of like, oh, well, there's guardrails and trust, right? But you can break guardrails. You can break trust. Cybersecurity is always lagging behind. Criminals will always make more money with technology than legit enterprises, right? Because they're criminals. They'll exploit it, right? And we're seeing that with AI. The drift breach, 17-year-old kid with AI hit how many global enterprises, right? And that's just what we know, right? But the average person doesn't understand these things and are saying a lot of this stuff, right? Like people don't realize that, even in OpenAI, right, because of the lawsuit of, the New York Times, like all that stuff is stored, right, and can be subpoenaed by courts. Like OpenAI just released like what people search for. How do they know these things? Like a lot of people still don't realize this is a software company that makes money. And software companies are ran by people, and people make bad decisions sometimes, right? Like Uber surveillance on all their people, right? And so like you have to remember those things. But when AI is in 5 years and AGI, like our brains are super smart, right? Like we can dump all of our information into a model, and like I did this, right? Like I downloaded all of my LinkedIn posts, I put them into a model, right? And I can chat with it, right? Because my idea is like eventually my memory is going to start to fade, right? And I want to have my tone and stuff out there. But our brains are super complex, right? Like we drop connections in between each other, right? Like we have a shared experience. We know what people look like. All of that is just programmed into tech by people who are very smart, who maybe not understand the average person. All that content, right, is from a very selected bias of people who actually post content, right? And they don't have those experiences of growing up maybe poor, right? Or having to struggle and innovate. So like, I don't think AGI is going to come anytime soon. And you can mark my words on September 16th, 2025. It's just, I think that insulting to humans, right? That like a brain, like a computer can be who a human is, right? Like anamorphism of AI also drives me crazy, right? Where it's like, well, I'm sorry. And like, you talk to it like it's a person, or like leaders out there, like you're going to be a manager of bots. Like, no, like that's desynthesizing context, right? That's conditioning you for a future, right? And that I think we need to instead lean in and say people are people. We should treat them as people. Machines are machines. We should treat them as machines until they become sentient, right? And have emotions and stuff like that we need to support. But I think right now it's sci-fi, right? Like, yeah, I think as a kid, right, growing up, like, where's my hoverboard? Where's my flying car, right? Like, these are the things that I'm still waiting on. And so until I'm proven wrong, I don't think we're going to have, the machines, right, of warning us how, close the doors, right? And like this stuff. So yeah, that's a soapbox and a rambling answer. But going back when you edit, in 5 years, I think we're still going to have these exact same conversations. Like, I think it's still too nascent of a technology. When you look at SaaS, right? It took 16 years for SaaS to take off. It took another 5-6 years for companies to still do it.
I have two things to add to this. At first, I think that I agree with you. I think that people really underestimate how hard are the things that we are doing sometimes, especially like when you're building any kind of like big enterprise software. You can see how much work can go into it. Like a lot of like tens, sometimes hundreds of very smart people working on delivering a good software, right? Salesforce as a company has like 70,000 people, 60,000 people working in it, right? There's a lot of people working, like a lot of very smart people, the smartest people you can find in like different countries working on creating software. It's not like you can just replace it with like some kind of chatbot. Like it's way more that like engineering and way more like thought and intuition and all those type of things coming into developing like large software. So I think people also kind of underestimate how hard are those things, right? They see, oh, like AI can like create a trigger, right? But okay, it can create a trigger, but try to integrate this trigger into like existing org, right? Try to make it work with a org that has like 50 flows and 100 other triggers. That's the real challenge.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point, right? How many companies do you walk into, right, that say like we're special, right, or like here's our exception to the rule, and then you ask, where's that documentation? So you can't have an agent do all those things that a human does, right? Because it's not documented. We talk about institutional knowledge and tribal knowledge in companies, right? Or that single point of failure because they know where all the bodies are hidden. If that's not documented somewhere, you can't expect that agent to do it. If you don't have a process documented, right, and how you interact with clients or how you push a process through, your agent's not going to do it. And so I think it's those BAs, right, and those operation leaders out there who need to start documenting things and putting them in there to prepare for the future. Like if you're still sitting here and you don't have any, and someone comes into your org or company today and they can't readily learn what you do in a day, you're not going to be ready for AI. And the good news is start documenting that stuff today because that helps you today, no matter what, right? Onboarding and bringing on a new consultant, even yourself, right? Explaining the new process, working on a feature. So I think that's the disservice a lot of companies are doing is they're jumping way into agents and trying to POC without having that understanding of what your business actually is or the people who they are. I mean, we see it in layoffs all the time, right? Like you lay off people and then all of a sudden something falls down and people have to relearn it because there was no documentation. And that's the thing. Document it and then have that agent that you can interrogate your documentation for. So when people go on vacation, right, and or quit, right, you don't lose that knowledge.
Totally. Business is gonna stay businesses, right? So we still need to document and prepare all of that. And probably the second thing that I wanted to add to your previous AGI take is that a lot of people right now, what I see, especially like those that I speak with, they're getting so obsessed with different like AI things, and I think it's kind of like they're just wasting a lot of time because we are so early into the journey that it's like they're trying to do these crazy workflows. They built like those agents that talk to agents and blah blah blah. But this is like trying to build like a really beautiful site like in 90s, you know, like trying to like with undeveloped tools, with like tools that cannot really do that, trying to do something from the future. And I think you just rather should wait a few years, then you will be able to do a lot of those things.
Going back to like building a site in the 90s, I'm not a front end guy. I'm terrible at it. I'm a back end engineer, but I think that's where AI can come in, right? Is I still have the skills that understand code and architecture and those pieces. So even though I don't know front end, I can use AI to help me there, but I'm still in that loop, learning, because I review all my code and go, why did it do that, right? Like, oh, that is repeating a method. Oh, nope, that actually exposed my backend in a way I don't. So like, I think AI can push you there, right? And as it gets better there, that's what makes every individual better. But I don't think we're at a point, right, where you can say like, oh, 50% of our people don't need to exist, right? Because AI can do that. I think that's a fallacy, and it sounds great to investors, but I think set your org back a few years.
I agree. I recently vibe coded. Like I'm also not a front end developer, but I vibe coded like a small site for my course that's gonna come up next week, and it's pretty good. Like I liked it. I like the feeling. You know, like you have an evening, you sit down, you get coffee or like tea, and then you're just like, hey, ChatGPT, you're a senior software front end engineer. Think hard to make a really good website, and then it does a really good website for you. Yeah, the reason why I wanted to ask you about this is because I want to ask you, is career in Salesforce still worth it? Would you, anyone who is like going into Salesforce development right now with all the AI things, would you recommend people going into Salesforce and specifically Salesforce development?
On the surface, I would say no, right? And it's going to be a great soundbite. You're going to put that out there, and I'm going to get in so much trouble. On the surface, I would say no. It is not worthwhile to get into Salesforce only. I think you need to develop the skills, and I honestly think this has always been the case. You need to develop the architectural skills and the technology skills to know tech in general, right? Salesforce has gotten a lot more advanced than 15 years ago, right? When the accidental admin came out, you used workflow rules, email alerts, and built objects. Like that was it, right? Like it was still very basic platform. Look at today, right? You have Lightning Web Components, which are React in the front end, right? You still have Apex. Flow is basically Apex visually, right? Like no doubts about it. You can call it low code. It is code. It is basically Apex, right? That's like technology experience. You have data cloud. That is a database and, admin, right? That is data engineering. That is pipeline management. You have pub sub events, right? Which are Kafka, right? And event driven. Like these are all concepts that we live and breathe on the product engineering side, but I don't see them on the Salesforce side talked about as concepts, right? We don't talk about Conway's law. We don't talk about big O and little o notation, right? In performance. We don't talk about alerting and monitoring, right? We don't talk about APMs. Like every single company out there invents its own custom object for logging, right? When we have Datadog, we have BetterStack, we have Nebula Logger, right? We have these tools that the entire industry out there in software uses every single day. Learn those concepts, right? Especially if you're going into vibe coding, right? Like if I'm an enterprise engineer now, I'm going to probably be building, internal tools that integrate across the stack, right? Like I might not go into Salesforce all the time. I need to learn how Salesforce works. I need to learn all the plumbing there. But I would say entering Salesforce today as a career, as a Salesforce admin, I don't know if it's viable. Like I talk to so many people who get lucky to find those jobs, but it's going downhill as companies pull out. I think having a wide foundation and knowledge and that TCH skills, right, where you know tech all the way across, and then you kind of dive down into one area. That's what I would do if I was coming into Salesforce or tech today, right? Maybe lean more into MuleSoft, right, which teaches you open API, specs, but a lot of that's technical and hard, right? And if you look at the average admin or architect, they're coming from a career shift. In the Salesforce ecosystem, we don't dive deep into technical, topics, right? It's like, cool, build a field. Like, okay, what is a Boolean normally used for, right? Like, why is a Boolean there? Like, why is a single pick list matter? Like, why are these data-driven objects really important? Why does the security model really exist? Because things like drift happen, right? All of these things, learn them. They apply well outside of Salesforce, right? If you learn all of those skills and foundations, your career can go many ways, right? You can be a BA, you can be a security application engineer, you can be cybersecurity, you can be a BA, you can be a consultant. I would say today, don't pigeon yourself into Salesforce, but learn Apex, right? Learn Flow. Like, these are very good intro, easy ways to learn in a very safe environment that then you can take those skills and apply it to traditional app dev, right? Apex will teach you Java and concepts of those things. Flow will teach you, how to code, right, visually, and you can apply that differently if you want, or apply it to N8N or Make or Zap or HubSpot, right? So I would say, learn those skills, right? Learn them the easy way that you want and the position that you need to. But yeah, programs like yours, learning Apex, I'd absolutely sign up for it today because it does teach those technical concepts. You're not just teaching Apex, you're teaching all of those individual things behind it.
Basically becoming a software engineer.
Yeah. And, and we can talk about software engineers and whether we exist in the future or not. I would say we do, right? We're just not going to be writing as much code, right? We're still going to be reading probably more code than we do today, but that's the thing in engineering, right? Is you'll always read more code than you'll ever write. And that's why, learning Apex, right? And learning the correct foundations applies no matter where AI goes.
No, I agree with you. I agree with you. I agree on that. I think we had a period in Salesforce where, like, when I started with Salesforce, it was like 6 years ago or something. We had a period where you could just get into Salesforce with knowing what Salesforce is, essentially, like knowing the process builders a little bit maybe, and like a little bit of flows back then when they started. And you didn't have to know like the whole other things. You didn't have to know coding. But right now, I would never recommend anyone to just go and try to become a Salesforce admin without learning how to code. It's just so hard. Did I miss anything? I mean, I could go for a long time. Did I miss anything that we didn't cover? We didn't cover Agentforce for sure, but that would be a very long discussion.
Yeah, we can. I envision one day grabbing a webinar or a panel with a whole bunch of people and debating Agentforce and pros and cons. So yeah, we'll table that conversation. But no, this has been great. I've enjoyed the conversation, and I hope the listeners do too. And happy to come back anytime.
If people want to follow you, where's the best to follow you?
Yeah, so LinkedIn is the current best spot. Matt Pieper, Pieper. But I'm also on Blue Sky. You can find me at mattpieper.com or rightsize.tech. And then there's a Substack launching in the next week. So stay tuned for that.
You're boycotting X.com?
Yeah, I quit X a while ago.
Yeah, me too. I'm also on Blue Sky.
Yeah, nice.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for joining.
Yeah, thanks, Igor.